Humans only have one ending.
Get that Barbie!
Ideas live forever.
We're going to go ahead and move on to my review for Barbie. And for those that don't know, the film Barbie is based off the Mattel toy line, and Barbie, also known as stereotypical Barbie in the film, suffers an existential crisis that leads her to question her world, her existence, and her very future. Before kind of getting into the film itself, I want to talk about the Barbie brand and just the marketing and the lead up to this movie. You know, I mean, I feel like all of us have been aware of Barbie throughout our entire lives. You know, I'm a boy, so I didn't really, you know, that didn't appeal to me. You know, the Barbie dolls and things, but I did recognize its popularity. I remember as a kid just seeing commercials for Barbie and all the very other, you know, Barbie-esque, you know, knockoffs and stuff, and, you know, Ken, of course, and, you know, Barbie of all these different jobs, and you get this Barbie who she's you know, a pilot, you know, she's an astronaut, she's this, she's that, and I recognize the popularity of the toy. I mean, I think it's reasonable to say it's one of the most popular, one of the most important toys in human history, chat. So I respect it for that. But it was just never my thing. You know, I was always aware of it, didn't grow up with it. But hey, more power to people that enjoy Barbie and all the different types of Barbies, right? Now, the lead up to the movie, you know, it's funny because, of course, the filmmaker for Barbie is Greta Gerwig. I was like, well, that's an interesting choice, just because of, you know, her past works or her filmography, chat. You know, loved Little Women. You know, Lady Bird was fantastic, and I was like, oh, okay, she's gonna do the Barbie movie, which at the time, I just assumed it was gonna be like an animated CGI movie. I feel like a lot of people just kind of assumed that. Like, you know, she was introduced, obviously, in Toy Story 2, you know, that's when we first saw, like, oh, wow, baby, you know, Barbie is a CGI character. I know there's been just a ton of CGI Barbie movies. Like, I think there's probably like over 100 now at this point. But for me, it was like, oh, there she is. And I thought that was cool how they introduced her there. And then in Toy Story 3, how she was introduced, that was pretty cool. And so I just assumed that that's what the movie was going to be. It's like, oh, good for Greta Gerwig getting into animation. That's nice. But then it was revealed that it was going to be live action, and it was going to star Margot Robbie, which was like, okay, that's a great choice. And then, you know, Ryan Gosling and Will Ferrell, this huge cast, and I was like, okay, like, I didn't expect live action, but hey, let's see what you got. I'm sure it'll be a nice, fun family comedy. And then, like, all the marketing started coming out for the movie, and you guys know, I was confused. I'm like, who is this film for? You know, like, Barbie having an existential crisis and, you know, stating things like, does anyone ever think about death? It was, like, weird. And then just the jokes and the sexual innuendo and talking about, you know, beating each other up. I was very confused by it. And I didn't know who it was for, but apparently the marketing worked. It caught on. People became fans of the movie before they even saw it, and, you know, they're very passionate right now. But I was a little weirded out by the marketing, because I thought, you know, if I was Mattel, if I was a Warner Brothers executive, I'd be like, yeah, let's make a Barbie movie for little girls who play, you know, Barbie, or people who are nostalgic for Barbie when, you know, when they become adults. That's what I would do. But hey, marketing clearly worked, so, you know, tip of my non-existent hat to Mattel and Warner Brothers, and, you know, the people that put together all those trailers. But for me, I was kind of going in with, like, no expectations, you know, for this movie. And then you just kind of have the narrative coming out, you know, even before this film does, and people, you know, from all different demographics saying this about the film and that about the film. I'm just like, Jesus, all this noise. I'm like, I just want to go ahead and see the movie, and, you know, and give you my honest opinion, my honest and earnest opinion on the film, chat. And I have to say, I have to start off and say that I can appreciate and respect what Greta Gerwig and the other filmmakers were able to get away with in this movie. Being able to say the things that they say and comment on in a film that is primarily focused on adapting one of the most popular toys in human history, in the history of the world, is an impressive feat, you know, by itself. And listen, make no mistake, this movie is primarily concerned with delivering its message. And it's a very feminist message, you know, very feminist message. and weaving its socio-political opinions throughout its narrative. Not to say that the film doesn't care about the comedy, the characters, and their overall storylines. That is present in certain cases. But I can't deny that the messaging of this movie supersedes those other aspects a lot of the time. And and the thing is, I want to focus on those other aspects first for the film. You have a pretty large and a pretty impressive cast in this movie, from everyone to like Margot Robbie, to Ryan Gosling, to America Ferrera and Michael Cera. The cast is so large that sometimes we don't get to spend as much time with as many of these actors as I would like. But Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling, and Kate McKinnon, funny enough, were some of the standouts to me in this film. Margot Robbie, who, I don't think she's really had a lot of luck recently with some of her films, Amsterdam and Babylon and, a few flops. She absolutely shines here. She is a Barbie that is living in a literal fantasy land, and she starts just questioning her very existence, her own existence, basically having an existential crisis. She decides, in the course of the film, to leave Barbie Land for the real world, and the way in which she experiences our world is one of the best aspects of the film. We see her approach situations in which she is sometimes blissfully confused, humorously honest, and even kind of terrified. And it's overall, it's a really entertaining performance that I found to be beautifully charming. I think she does a great job, even with the material being so weird. I was very, very impressed of her. There's even some scenes I want to get to later on. There's one scene in particular that I was like, wow, this is very well done because of how subtle it was and how introspective it was. Ryan Gosling is probably the film's biggest scene stealer. That's what I would like to call him. He is a scene stealer in this movie and is definitely the most comedic. He's the comic relief. Although he's kind of one note in the film, he plays the note in the funniest and just dumbest way. His ignorance, complete lack of self-awareness, and crippling feelings of inadequacy, especially compared to Barbie, are pretty funny. And listen, he does get a moment of character development towards the end of the film, but he just kind of excels as the film's primary source of comic relief. I mean, he is so woefully inept, and you just end up most of the time laughing at him, even though he's kind of miserable in the film. And he does have a bit of a dark turn later on, which I thought was interesting. Surprisingly, as I said at the top, I can't believe I'm saying this, chat, but I really enjoyed Kate McKinnon's performance as Weird Barbie. Because in this world, we have all different types of Barbie, chat. We have, stereotypical Barbie, President Barbie, and we have Weird Barbie. And I when I was watching the movie, I forgot she was in it, because I hadn't seen the trailers in a while. And I was like, oh, yeah, Kate McKinnon's in here. And so the whole concept for her Barbie is, because, it kind of shows that, hey, listen, yeah, boys are known for roughhousing, being rough with their toys. Girls are known for also messing with their toys and being rough with their toys. And it was also the case of Barbie, because it's also been kind of parodied in other things like Rugrats. Remember, Angelica's doll was Cynthia, which is a Barbie parody, and she just turned her Cynthia into an abomination. That's what happened to these Barbies. These Barbies were being used roughly by little girls, and now they're kind of abominations. And her zany. Usually I'm just I don't like it because I feel like that's Kate McKinnon's crushed her entire career. She's just weird for the sake of being weird when it doesn't even call for it. I feel like that's a lot of previous films, especially Ghostbusters, which I really did not like her character there, and just some other comedies she's appeared in. Here, it makes sense within context of the movie. And so I was like, oh, I actually found her really charming and really funny, and I loved how weird it is, and it made sense in the story itself. So I never would have thought I would have said I liked a Kate McKinnon performance, but she is legitimately great in the movie. It's in the limited capacity that she's in. And that's the other thing too. The rest of the cast, they're solid. They're very solid, but most of them honestly feel forgotten halfway through the movie. You know, we have all these characters that are built up. We have Issa Rae, you know, as President Barbie. We have Michael Cera, who plays Alan. He's not a Ken. He's just Alan. And like in Will Ferrell, who's like the president of Mattel. But there just kind of comes a point where the movie just moves on from them completely, and it left me kind of just asking myself, like, what was the point of introducing them if you're just not going to do anything with them, you know, later on? Like America Ferrera, she's also in the movie, and she again, she's solid, but you have characters that don't really feel like thoroughly developed, and they almost kind of just function as the source, like they just function as a way in which to deliver the film's message, and that's really it. And they don't really get any depth, they don't get any development, they don't really have like too many interesting interactions. Like, listen, I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm going to talk at you right now, and like you have those characters, and I didn't, I don't know, I didn't care for that, especially when you kind of built them up, and then later on you're like, whatever. On a technical level, the film is very impressive. The production design, the cinematography, the costumes, the sets. Like, I could see this being nominated for awards. Like, they were able to create an entire world. And it doesn't, I mean, listen, I'm sure there was CGI assistance, and there most assuredly is. But there are just so many buildings and sets and places within Barbie World, Barbie Land, where it's like they took all those, you know, Barbie's mansion, Barbie's house, and like all these different environments and just made enlarged versions of them. And it looks great. I mean, I have never seen more pink in my entire life in a film. You know, almost kind of like visually, it's like, oh my God, you can go cross-eyed looking at it. But they nailed it. Like this film's fashion sense was on point, and it's vivid. And you know, someone who I've always kind of been frustrated when you have these adaptations of, like we were just talking about earlier, for One Piece, for example, where, you know, it's a very vivid looking cartoon, very vivid looking anime, and yet why is it all muted all of a sudden? Why is it all desaturated? Little Mermaid is another example this year where that's a cartoon, that's a piece of animation that originally is so vivid and beautiful and used to colors, but it's like, why is everything desaturated? Why is everything like a gray film on every scene? Here, it's like, nope. It's super colorful and stays colorful, especially when we're inside that world. So, on a technical level, this film is beautiful looking. I love the look of this movie, and it deserves heaps of praise. One thing I do have to criticize, though, chat, is, you know, the film's messaging, which, again, that comes first in this movie, is extremely heavy-handed. You know, even though it has its moments of subtlety that I think are actually handled like really well, it gets introspective with Barbie, and the writing with Margot Robbie's performance, I think, showcases that very well. But there's just a shift about halfway through where it just kind of stops being so introspective and subtle, and more just wants to talk at me, or in many cases, kind of talk down to me. You know, even if it's a message I agree with, which it is. In this case, I do agree with a lot of the messaging in this film, but I never like it when any movie literally feels like it just stops dead in its tracks and stands in a soapbox and just wags its finger in my face in smugly. Especially, and that's the thing, because when this movie gets the same point across earlier, when it's being clever and subtle. Like there's a scene in the movie where Barbie is looking at this stereotypical Barbie, that is Margot Robbie's Barbie, is looking at this older woman, and how they handle that and how it deals with, you know, mortality, and Barbie coming to terms with that she's not going to look the way she does anymore, and that she is going to grow older. Like, I thought that was handled very well. Like, every time the message was focused just like on Barbie's own existential crisis and how she's being very introspective, and all her experiences All that is great. Like that, I was like, oh, this is how it's going to be. Then nice. And I'm like, what do people complain about? Like, this makes sense because it's all it's personal. The messaging for her is personal. But then later on in the movie, then it's like, no, hold on a minute. We're going to stop the scene to talk about this. And that's where I thought it was like, you could still do this. You could do that, all of that, but do it how you did it earlier. And I don't understand the sudden shift. It was very weird where you were doing it so well originally. With Margot Robbie's character. And then you completely change it later on. Like the method changed. And I don't know, that kind of took me out of the movie. That was weird. And the thing is, though, like this film is going to have so many people loving it. I have no doubt about that. Just in terms of its production design, there's some fun musical numbers here, some great songs, and it succeeds in that regard. And listen, I walked out of it. Despite my issues with, I didn't feel like they gave the rest of the supporting cast enough to do. Where like you build them up and you don't really do much with them later on. And I feel like some of the messaging I think really works well. And then other times where it just feels heavy-handed. Again, even though I agree with it, even though I was like, I see what you're saying, I agree, but stop yelling at me. It's not very appealing. But at the same time, people might like that heavy-handedness. People might like go, yeah. The thing is like. When those moments happen, and they do with great frequency, especially with America Ferrera's character, where she says very loudly, kind of the whole point of the movie. There was one person in my audience that was like, "Yeah!" It was one lady. I was like, that there you go. They were speaking to that person, clearly. But I feel like those scenes, a lot of those scenes, it could have been handled better if you just had a more deft hand. And it's weird because I thought Greta Gerwig was doing a good job for so much of the movie, but then there was this sudden change, and I don't know, it felt really weird to me, and didn't come across as earnest as it originally did. But still, I still think this is a very good movie. I feel like they could have been more subtle with certain things. Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling, Kate McKinnon, I think give the best performances in the film. Like Ryan, I would not be surprised, if Ryan. I mean, it's crazy to say this, but at the same time, it's not. Like Ryan Gosling could be nominated for like an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor because he is so fun to watch on screen. He is incredibly committed to this role, and it kind of reminded me of an even dumber version of his character from The Nice Guys. And like that movie just didn't get a lot of recognition when it was originally came out. Now it's kind of like a cult film, but seeing like this film and how it's already a phenomenon, I can see him getting award attention. Yeah, hell, even Margot Robbie, honestly. Like they got the right Barbie and they got the right Ken for the Barbie movie. There's no doubt about it. And they're great. I like Kate McKinnon quite a bit. It's not a perfect movie. It has those flaws, like I said. I think it could be more clever with its messaging. It's just not. It's just too heavy-handed. But overall, I really enjoyed it, and I think a lot of people that go with an open mind, you'll like it a lot too. But just know that it's sometimes going to be almost too blunt to the point where it almost kind of comes across. Well, it's like, yeah, we know, we get it, it's obvious. But hey. I enjoyed Barbie 2023. What about you? What about everyone else out there? What did you think of Barbie? I'm very curious.
I hope everyone enjoyed the video, and I want to take the time to tell you about my Patreon, Class in the Glass, which offers hundreds of film commentaries and video reactions to numerous movies, TV shows, and cartoons. If you're a fan of shows like Batman the Animated Series and Avatar: The Last Airbender, or films like Aliens and Raiders of the Lost Ark, my Patreon is the platform for you. Currently, I'm doing a subathon to reach 75 subs on the platform. If we hit 75 subs, we'll be able to start voting on the next edited YouTube reaction, which will include actual clips and scenes from the movies and shows I comment over. Choose from such films as Fire and Ice, Masters of the Universe, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, or Spawn. Subscribing at any tier level is appreciated, and feel free to give feedback at any time. Thank you again for watching the video, and see you next time.